You could feel it in the air that morning, something electric, heavy, and ready to break. The courthouse steps were lined with cameras, microphones, and flashes, all aimed at one man who had been silent for months. Keith Urban, the same man who once lit up stadiums with love songs, was now walking into a courtroom where every truth and lie about his life was about to collide. No stage lights, no music, just the cold glare of reality and 1,000 eyes waiting for him to fall. But little did they know, Keith wasn't coming to defend himself. He was coming to end the story that had nearly destroyed him. Inside, the buzz was deafening. Reporters whispered like vultures circling over a wounded prey. Somewhere in the crowd, Maggie Boss sat in the front row, hiding behind oversized sunglasses, her hands trembling despite her attempt at confidence. And a few rows back sat Nicole Kidman. Quiet, composed, but unreadable. She wasn't just watching her husband fight for his reputation. She was watching the man she loved walk into a storm she never asked for. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. But that silence shattered the moment Keith's lawyer stood and projected a folder of screenshots onto the courtroom monitor. Gasps echoed through the air like thunder. There it was, the proof that turned every whisper and rumor on its head. The messages between Maggie and a fake lab technician. Conversations about money, about a forged DNA report, about how to frame Keith Urban as the father of a child that never existed. The so-called lab report, just a Microsoft Word file with mismatched fonts, wrong timestamps, and metadata screaming forgery. One tech expert even muttered, "You can't build a baby out of clip art." The judge tried not to smile, but even he couldn't hide it. The story that had broken the internet months ago, Maggie's tearful Instagram live, the pregnancy claim, the accusations, was suddenly collapsing under its own lies. Back then, she had painted Keith as the heartless star who abandoned her. She'd cried on camera, said he promised her forever, then ghosted her the moment she needed him most. And the internet ate it up. Hashtags like Monartrish and Justice for Maggie trended for days. But today, the truth was louder than her tears. Keith sat there, quiet, his eyes fixed on the floor. No smugness, no anger, just exhaustion. When his lawyer asked him to speak, he stood slowly. The kind of slow that comes from carrying months of humiliation. "I've spent my life writing songs about truth," he said, his Australian accent steady but sharp. "But this was a story written about me that never happened." You could feel the words hit the room like a wave. The reporters stopped typing. Even Maggie froze. And for a brief second, you could hear nothing but the sound of breathing. The defense tried to fight back. They claimed the screenshots were fake, said hackers had planted evidence, that online trolls had edited the files. But it didn't matter. The timestamps, the payment logs, the emails, everything pointed to one thing. Maggie had orchestrated a fake pregnancy scandal to destroy Keith's image and gain sympathy. Nicole Kidman didn't move. Her face stayed perfectly composed, but her silence said everything. Decades in Hollywood had made her immune to the noise. But this wasn't a movie. It was her marriage, her life, her family. When the court adjourned for lunch, the world outside erupted. Headlines exploded before anyone could blink. Keith Urban exposes fake pregnancy scheme. Twitter went wild. TikTok detectives zoomed in on timestamps. Reddit users found that Maggie's hospital photos had been stolen from Pinterest. The internet that once crucified Keith was now worshipping him. Hashtags flipped overnight. Hashtag Urban vindicated. Hashtag fake baby files. Fans called it justice. But Keith didn't smile. He walked out beside Nicole, brushed her hand, and gave reporters the faintest, most relieved smile, the kind that said, "The truth's finally catching up." But the storm wasn't over. Just as the world began to celebrate, the prosecutor announced there was more to come. "The witness list has been updated," he said. "New evidence will be presented after recess." Reporters froze midst. Something bigger was hiding behind the lies, and everyone could feel it. That afternoon, Maggie returned to the stand. The woman who once dazzled Nashville with her voice now looked hollow, her shoulders slumped, her eyes empty. Keith's lawyer approached the bench, holding a printed email chain. "Your Honor," he began, "this is correspondence between Ms. Ba and an alias account under the name Hannah Fields. In these emails, she posed as a lab assistant, demanding hush money to protect both parties from humiliation." The courtroom erupted. The implication was brutal. Maggie hadn't just lied. She'd tried to extort money to keep her fake story alive. Nicole finally looked at Maggie. Just once, a calm, cold stare that pierced through the chaos. Witnesses later said that look said more than any closing argument ever could. And that's when the tide truly turned. Public sympathy for Maggie evaporated overnight. Comment sections filled with snake emoji. Sponsors pulled their deals. Nashville radio quietly stopped playing her songs. She was done. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. But the prosecutor wasn't finished. He hinted that Maggie wasn't acting alone. Someone bigger, more powerful, had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. No names were mentioned, but whispers spread like wildfire. Hollywood connections, hidden money trails, the kind of rumors that could turn scandal into an empire-wide collapse. As the gavel fell that evening, signaling the end of day one, Keith let out a deep breath. maybe the first real one in months. Nicole brushed his arm gently and whispered something only he could hear. He nodded faintly, and together they walked out as the cameras flashed. But this wasn't the ending. It was just the start of a new chapter. The next morning, the courthouse steps looked like a movie premiere. Reporters everywhere, fans holding posters, the buzz of anticipation thick enough to touch. Rumor had it Nicole Kidman herself would testify, and that alone turned a courtroom hearing into a global headline. Inside, Keith sat still, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. Across the room, Maggie looked like a ghost, her confidence gone, her name already turning to dust. Then the prosecutor dropped a quiet bombshell, a digital forensics report proving the DNA files Maggie submitted weren't just altered, they were completely fabricated. Every line of code, every timestamp, every metadata entry screamed forgery. "This isn't a mistake," the judge said flatly. "This is fraud." Gasps swept the room. Nicole exhaled slowly, poised and calm, the way only someone who's been through hell learns to breathe. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Nicole Kidman was called to testify. The cameras clicked like thunder as she stood, dressed in black, elegant and composed. She took the stand, met the judge's gaze, and spoke in a steady, quiet voice that carried through the entire courtroom. "Lies destroy quietly," she said. "This didn't just attack my husband, it attacked our family, our peace, our name." Her words didn't need drama. They carried truth, heavy, simple, and sharp. Even Maggie couldn't look up. When Nicole stepped down, the entire room was still. Variety would later call it poetic justice. TMZ called it Nicole's quiet revenge. Fans called it the moment she took her power back. But outside, the noise was deafening. The internet exploded again. Hashtags everywhere. TikToks recreating her testimony. Edits of her line. Lies destroy quietly, spreading like wildfire. Back inside, Maggie's team tried one last desperate move. They accused Keith of leading her on, saying their messages showed emotional manipulation. But Keith's lawyer shut it down instantly. "Those texts," he said, holding up the evidence, "came from a public fan hotline, not his personal phone." The courtroom laughed softly, and Maggie's defense crumbled. And then, the twist no one saw coming. The FBI joined the investigation. The payments to the fake lab had crossed state lines, turning what began as gossip into a federal crime. Within hours, Maggie's sponsors cut ties. Her radio deals ended, and her Instagram vanished. Her name became a cautionary tale, the artist who tried to fake a scandal and lost everything. Meanwhile, Keith's music streams skyrocketed. Fans called him the quiet king who fought back. But fame didn't feel like victory. Insiders said he looked broken, hollow, like a man who had won the war but lost himself in it. During a recess, Keith leaned to a reporter and whispered, "They're not chasing truth, they're chasing chaos." The clip went viral instantly. People called it his most honest quote ever, a reminder that in Hollywood, sometimes lies travel faster than truth can run. But just when the story fell over, another leak hit the internet. Blurry footage of Keith and Maggie arguing during a break. The audio was faint, but lip readers slowed it down and claimed they could hear her hiss. "You weren't supposed to say that." And Keith replying, "You left me no choice." That exchange became legend overnight, fans quoting it, making turning it into the symbol of truth versus deceit. The next twist came hard and fast. The judge ordered all parties to hand over their phone records. Everyone went silent. But then, something unexpected happened. Nicole's lawyers asked for a delay, a small request, but one that raised eyebrows everywhere. And that's when Keith Urban stood up, tired and furious. "I'm done protecting them," he said quietly. The entire room froze. He reached into his bag and handed over his phone, unredacted, uncensored, everything included. Texts, emails, records, all of it. What those messages revealed didn't just finish Maggie's downfall, they hinted at financial misconduct tied to Nicole's production company. Gasps filled the courtroom. Reporters didn't know where to look. It wasn't just about lies anymore. It was about money, power, and betrayal. By the end of that week, Maggie Ba's career was over. Nashville dropped her, sponsors erased her, and her name disappeared from the charts. Keith was seen leaving court alone, no wedding ring, no smile, no relief. When a reporter called out, "Keith, what about Nicole?" he paused, turned slightly, and said only one thing: "I hope she tells the truth." That one line broke the internet, because suddenly, everyone realized maybe the dark secret Keith had exposed wasn't just Maggie's. Maybe it reached deeper into the heart of the empire he and Nicole had built together. The camera flashes caught his face as he walked away. A man who had finally taken back his story, even if it meant losing everything else. And that's the thing about truth in Hollywood, it isn't about justice. It's about who owns the story when the lights go out. And for the first time, Keith Urban wasn't the subject of someone else's script. He was the author of his own